Awesome. Well, it's 5:01, so I'm gonna get started. I just wanted to say hello and welcome to the Wallowa County Basics of Solar. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Kate Ayers, and I'm the Community Education Specialist here at Solar Oregon. I also would like to say that I'm really excited to have Peter here, who lives in Wallowa County and who will be sharing his solar story later tonight. I also would just like to note that we are going to be recording this session and we'll send that recording out to you in the next week or so. So to get started, I just kind of wanted to give an overview about what solar energy is. So in its basic form, solar energy is just energy that we are harnessing from the sun. So that can take the form of hang drying our clothes or putting out tea to make sun tea, or on the right-hand side, you see this house that is using solar panels to harness energy from the sun to create electricity. So our agenda for this evening, we're going to be talking about the benefits of solar and is it sunny enough here in Oregon for solar energy. We're going to talk a little bit about how solar works. Is my home right for solar? We'll touch on solar plus storage, solar financials, and then as I mentioned, Peter will be sharing his solar story to close us off. So before we really get going, I wanted to talk to you about Solar Oregon. We're a nonprofit based in Portland that has been focusing on education, outreach, community, and advocacy for over 40 years now. Some of the things that we focus on, our big thing is what you're here attending tonight, our Basics of Solar events. We also host solar tours. We just finished up in October a Go Zero tour of homes, and we also do a solar winery tour. We also have solarized campaigns, which are a great way for an entire community to get together and go solar together. And then we focus on peer-to-peer education and are really looking to boost that program up in the next year or so. If you are interested in supporting our work, we are so happy to have some really wonderful members and donors that help us with our work and being able to do these things. If you would like to become a member, you can find out more information about that on our website, or you can email us at info@solar.org, solaroregon.org, sorry. And if you are a member on this call, thank you so much for being a member and helping to support us. And finally, I just wanted to give a really big thank you to our main partner and sponsor for this event, Energy Trust of Oregon. They're a really great nonprofit that offers great incentives and programs that foster clean energy and energy efficiency across the state. So thank you to Energy Trust for helping us put this event together. So I know that we are in the times of COVID and we are probably all very used to Zoom, but I wanted to give a quick little overview and some tips. The big thing is our Q&A button, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. Please ask questions as they come up through this event. We're planning on answering all the questions we can at the end of this presentation. And yeah, the more questions, the better. The Q&A is the best place to put those. I also wanted to let you know about the chat box, which my coworker Pramod has been putting some links into. This is a great way where you can talk to everybody that's in this space. So please feel free to share anything in that. And then the final piece is polling, which is just a way for us to gather some information through multiple choice questions. And it's a great way for us to get feedback. So right now I'm going to launch a couple polls. The first poll is a location poll. So just kind of seeing where you guys are tuning in from. I know this is an event that was really pushed out to Wallowa County and just kind of seeing if that's where we landed. Awesome. I'm seeing some people putting in. I'm going to give just about 30 more seconds to see if we can get some more people answering here. This is great. Okay, so I'm going to stop this poll. And everyone here is tuning in from Eastern Oregon, which is awesome. Super happy to have you here. I have one more poll that I'm going to launch. Please know that these are completely anonymous. This is a demographics poll. This helps us kind of see what our reach is right now and to help us build out our programs to make sure that we're checking in with people and everything. So if you are interested, as I said, this is a completely anonymous poll, but if you're interested in participating, it would really help us in our further projects. So I'll give just a minute here for people to fill this one out. I know it's a little bit longer. And if I see a question in the chat, if polls aren't working for you, but you would like to see what these polls are and participate in them, I'm happy to send out an email afterwards. There will be an email with a survey, but if you would like to participate, I'm happy to send out an email afterwards to gain that information. Awesome. So we have 80% here. So I'm going to end this poll. Thank you so much to those who participated in that. It is super helpful for us. Great. So let's get started here. I'm going to start here with how can solar benefit me? So one of the major things that a lot of us hear about solar is the fact that it's clean, renewable energy. One of the other benefits is that since we're harnessing energy from the sun is always there. Even, we have cloudy days and everything, but the sun is going to be there. So that's a really awesome piece about solar. One of the other things that I think is really great is the fact that solar helps people offset electricity costs. So it saves you the money that you'd be paying for electricity through the power that you're generating with solar. And over time, that savings will help you pay off the cost of the system. And then once that system cost is paid off, those savings that you would see are now helping you build wealth through that. So that's also another really awesome benefit that solar can have. And then the final one that I'll touch on is energy resilience, which is the concept of solar plus storage. So this picture is showing a power outage, but that one system that you see, that one building that you see is powered off grid. So it's the combination of a solar system plus batteries. And I'll touch on that a little bit more. So I'm going to do one more poll here. And that is going to ask you, when you think about solar energy, kind of what is the thing that excites you the most about solar of the things that we went over? Or if there's something else that you have heard about solar, what is that's really exciting to you? Awesome. I'm seeing a great breakdown here, actually. I'll share these results. But this is really awesome to see that there's, half of the people who have answered are saying clean renewable energy. There's lots of you, 63% are interested in lowering utility costs. And then 38% are interested in energy resilience. That's really great to see. I think they're all really wonderful benefits that solar has. Cool. And I lied to you. I have one more poll, and this is the last one. What level of familiarity do you have with solar energy? So have you heard about it? Do you have friends that have solar or have talked to you about solar? Have you already talked to contractors, or do you yourself also have solar? Awesome. There's a bit of a breakdown here, but that's really great. Great to see that there are some people here that already have solar. That's awesome. And somebody who has talked to contractors, which is really great. But I'm really excited that I can share some more about what solar is for all of you. Great. Thank you guys so much for participating in these polls. As I said, they're really helpful for us to tailor these presentations a little bit better. Great. So I am going to jump on in again. So one of the big questions that we see when it comes to solar is the fact that we live in the Pacific Northwest. And while this is a picture of Portland specifically, we do deal with some cloudier days compared to, places out in other parts of the state that are known for being really sunny and really warm. But I'm curious if you would like to share in the chat if you know what country has the most solar per capita. Let me see if I can see if anyone's guessing in the chat. Awesome. Seeing some awesome guesses. So it is Germany. Germany right now has the most solar per capita. And the cool thing about that is we see in this this picture down here is a picture of Germany, which just shows how much rain, how much cloud coverage is happening. And then we have this picture of Oregon. And as you see, we get a lot more sun than Germany, and especially out in Eastern Oregon in Wallowa County, you get way more sun than Germany. So we can see some really great successes of solar energy. So let's jump into how does solar work? So I'm going to go over kind of what a system looks like at a very basic level. So this is, these are the system components. So first you have your photovoltaic panel or your solar panel. So sunlight hits that panel and produces electricity. The electricity that it produces is in DC voltage, and the thing that's important to note is that our home uses AC electricity. And so in order to make sure that we can utilize the energy from those solar panels, we also have an inverter or microinverter that can help us to convert that energy from DC to AC, which then will allow that to move into the home to the electrical panel. And if excess energy is produced, it can go out of your home towards the grid through a utility meter. So your utility meter, once you get solar, will be replaced with a bi-directional meter to register how much solar you're producing and how much energy you're utilizing. And this is to help us with net metering. So net metering is how you draw and give energy to the grid. So to illustrate this, we have these two charts. So the chart on the left, which talks about gaining credits, focuses on how in summer months when we see a lot of sun here, you're going to be producing a lot more energy through your solar system than you're consuming. And so because you're producing more, you'll be receiving net metering credits during that time. And that's super helpful when we come to these winter months, when you're consuming more energy than your solar system is producing, usually because it's, we get more rain or it's cloudier in the winter. And so that will help offset the credits that you've earned in the summer will help you offset those costs that you would see from consuming more in the winter. So moving forward, there are a couple ways that you can place solar panels on your property. The two main ones are roof mount and ground mount. So roof mount is probably the most popular one. It's a great way to conserve space because it just goes on top of your roof. Ground mount is another great option if you have the land and the space for it. One thing to note with that is that in order to have the ground mount, you do have to trench in order to get the wiring to and from your house, which can potentially increase a little bit of the cost there. So the next piece are the inverters that I mentioned. So the inverter is a box, like this white box that would sit next to your electrical panel. And then microinverters are just small inverters under each panel or every other panel. Both of these systems work really great. And your solar contractor will be able to help you kind of figure out what system is the best system for you and your solar panels. So system size is another really big question, on how big of a system you need. This really depends on the amount of electricity that you're consuming, but it's really important to note that you don't really need or want to have a system that's too big. So with net metering, you do receive those credits, but there is a billing cycle for the utility and you are unable to roll those credits over into the next year. So it's not really financially beneficial to build a system that's much larger than your need each year, just because you won't see much gain from that. And some of the other factors to consider are how much space your roof has, your budget, as well as any aesthetic issues. But kind of the average size that we see in a system is about 6 kilowatts or so. So moving forward, let's talk about, is my home right for solar? So one of the big pieces of this is your solar axis. So which way your house is facing. In the northern hemisphere here, the sun is always in our southern sky. So as you see in these pictures, you'll notice the sun going across the house. And so your roof orientation really dictates how much solar access you'll get. On the picture on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that southern access really gives you 100% of that since the sun is in the southern sky, but that doesn't mean that east or west facing roofs won't be good options for solar. So in order to dig into this a little bit more, we've put together this picture that's just a Google screenshot from a Portland neighborhood to assess these 3 different roofs for their kind of solar access abilities. So the first step is just putting on these green dots. So the green dots are on south and west facing roofs, which usually receive kind of the best solar resource. The yellow on the east are still really great options, but because we sometimes see cloudier or mistier mornings, and mornings are when the sun is in that eastern part of the sky, it could not give you the most solar access. And then the red dots are on north-facing roofs, which typically aren't great for solar at all, since the sun is in the southern sky. So the next piece to look at is just how much space on these roofs are available for solar. So these boxes, the green boxes, just show how there's a lot of space on these roofs, while the yellow ones are roof sections that are really broken up a little bit more, which could make it a bit harder to install a solar system. And when looking at this, it's also good to note if there are any things like vents, because that can decrease where you can put solar, just because you have to install around it. It doesn't eliminate that area for solar at all. You just have to install around those pieces. So looking further into roofs, the 2 main roof types are asphalt shingle and standing seam metal. These are both really great options for solar. If you have another type of roof, that does not mean that you can't have solar, but it's great to talk to your contractor about what that's going to look like. So when we're attaching solar to these 2 types of roof type, with asphalt shingle, we have this large flat rectangular base, which is called a flashing. And so in order to attach that flashing to the roof, your contractor and team will drill into the roof and into a rafter to make sure it can connect there. And then they'll completely seal it up. So water will run right over it. you won't have any issues with leakage. And then they'll place this rail here, which is what the solar panel will then be installed on. The standing seam metal roof is a little bit easier just because they can bolt this right onto the seam, and that will attach to the solar panel. So the other big thing to think about when looking at your roof is your roof's condition. So you don't necessarily have to think about this as hard with metal, just because metal roofs, just because they typically last a lot longer. Asphalt roofs, basically newer is better. This is mainly because in order to replace your roof, you do have to take the solar panels off and then reinstall them, which your contractor will be able to help you do all of that. It's also important to note with this that the Energy Trust Incentive does require that there is at least 10 years of roof life for that incentive. So the next piece to look at is just what's under your roof, which can make just a slight difference. So solar panels do sit slightly off of the roof. So when wind comes through, it can lift those panels up a little bit and just apply some stress on your roof. This is rarely a huge issue, but just something to think about. So with trusses, you have that an extra support beam and this metal support, which can really help that potential stress. Whereas with single beam rafters, if the span of those beams are wide enough, you may be required to just look into that roof structure a little bit. But very rarely do you find a roof that you can't install on. It's just kind of something to keep in mind. So moving forward, I wanted to briefly touch on energy resilience and solar plus storage, which I mentioned earlier, which is really just the combination of a solar system and then batteries, usually in your garage or somewhere along your home to store that energy. So energy resilience really just means that when the grid goes down, you can still power parts of your house. So this is kind of the chain of a utility grid that starts with a power plant, goes through your transmission system, and then down along the chain until it hits that end user. So the big thing to note here is that if one link in this chain goes down, then everything downstream from that is also going to be impacted. So when we see things like winter storms or squirrels that are taking out power outages, your home will not have power. And some of the other things to really think about with this are public safety power shutoffs, which are something that we saw this past late summer and fall with some of the wildfires across the state. Oregon Department of Energy also lists cyber attacks as a possible reason for some of these system breakdowns. And then another big one is the Cascadia seismic hazard, which will cause disruptions when that happens. So one of the real benefit of this is that when you have solar plus storage, that combination allows you to produce electricity to help you kind of island from that grid, so that if something does go down, you can still power important parts of your house. It's really important to note that you cannot do this with just solar panels. Because you are still tied to that grid, you do need that addition of a battery system. Okay, and going back to this picture, this just kind of depicts this idea of this building being able to island from the grid that they are attached to. Great. So now that we understand kind of the technical side of things and how you can assess your solar potential, I just wanted to chat a little bit about incentives and possible financials. So we can see from this chart that shows years on the bottom, and then on that y-axis, it just talks about system price of solar panels, that we've seen some significant drops since solar has kind of really hit the market. And a lot of that is because of the federal tax incentive. So the main incentives that we see here in Oregon are that federal investment tax credit, Oregon solar plus storage rebate, and then energy trust incentives. So the investment tax credit starting in 2021 will be 22%. The important thing to note with this is that you do need tax liability in order to take part of this incentive. The Oregon Solar Plus Storage rebate, the funding for this really comes in waves. So it is kind of up in the air of what that looks like, but your contractor and installer will be able to help you out with understanding that rebate. And then the Energy Trust Incentive, the things to note with this is that you must have PGE or Pacific Power to take advantage of this, and you must utilize one of their trade allies. But the incentive there is a cash incentive that is based on the size of the system that you're putting in place. So as a quick piece, the federal incentive is decreasing. So it is dropping starting in 2021 to 22%. And then in 2022, it will continue at 10% for commercial, but will end for residential. This incentive has been renewed previously by the legislature, but right now it's unclear if it will come back. So just to make sure that you have all of that information. Another program that I wanted to touch on was Energy Trust of Oregon's Solar Within Reach program. It's for income qualifying homes up to $9,000. You can find more about this through the Energy Trust website, or your contractor will have information about this, but the income threshold for a family of 4 is $77,520. So I wanted to break down just a quick little sample budget of what this might look like for you. I would like to note that please take this as a grain of salt. Each system is very different, and it really depends on how big of a system you need, what incentives you qualify for, and all of that. But just to give you kind of an example of what this could look like, there are 2 different systems here. The right-hand side shows low or moderate income. So after Energy Trust incentives, a possible state incentive, and then that 22% tax credit, you would be looking at potentially spending around $14,000, or for low or moderate income, just under $5,000 for that system. So to tie this all up, I really wanted to highlight that renewable energy is great and it's a really awesome option, but conserving energy and upgrading efficient appliances and systems can help you reduce the costs that you're spending on electricity up front, which will then help because you won't have to have as large of a solar system. And so this can be in the form of more efficient measures like adding insulation if your house doesn't have any or is low in areas, upgrading to efficient appliances, adding heat pumps and heat pump hot water heaters to replace baseboard heating. But these are really great options that can save you money up front and then help so that you don't have to pay as much for a solar system because your usage of energy is less. So when you're ready to consider your options, where do you start? One of the first things is to get your roof evaluated for your solar potential. We highly recommend hiring an energy trade ally contractor. They're rigorously evaluated, and they are also the only contractors approved for that energy trust incentive, which is a really great help in saving money on this. So the link for that is energytrust.org/solarbid. And when you go to that page, you can fill out a short survey, and you'll be able to receive 3 bids from different solar trade ally contractors that you can look at to see what they can offer for your particular situation. So when you're deciding on your choice, one of the great ways to choose between a contractor is to look at reviews. Most of them will provide you with a survey or a quote of your house, which is really helpful. Some other questions that you can ask is how much experience does your contractor have? What products do they offer? Some installers will use any type of product while others have a narrower selection. What kind of financing do they offer? Do they partner with a specific bank? What kind of warranty do they offer on installation, solar panels, inverters? And how long will the project take? Sometimes they can get really busy, and so understanding what the timeline looks for can be really helpful. And then ask for recommendations from community members that you know that have solar. And the main thing here is that there is no right company. It's just kind of considering your options, doing your research, and choosing which one is right for you. So when you're ready to install panels, when you've selected your installer and signed your contract with your contractor, installation itself usually takes just 1 to 2 days or so. Before installation, your contractor will obtain permits and apply for the Energy Trust incentive and help you out with net metering. Your contractor will really take care of all the paperwork and permitting, except for that federal tax credit, which is your responsibility to take advantage of. And after installation, your contractor will manage inspections and grid interconnection. So once your utility approves interconnection, your system will start producing clean electricity and you'll have your renewable energy ready to go. So perfect. To end this off, I really wanted to introduce someone that was from the area who has adopted solar. So I'm really excited to be able to welcome Peter to share his solar story with us.
Thank you, Kate. And hi, everybody. My name is Peter Foray, and I live about 8 miles up Whiskey Creek Road outside of Wallowa. So in our rural, remote county, I live in an even more rural and remote spot. And to just kind of share with you quickly kind of our solar journey, we bought property here in the county in 2007 and moved here full-time in 2011. So our initial solar system that was installed at our ranch was installed in 2011. At that time, there were different financial tax credits opportunities than there are today, but they were all quite similar. We worked with Energy Trust to begin with. So if there's anybody on this call that is either doing a home remodel or is considering doing a new home construction, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to Energy Trust. They worked very closely with me in helping create an extremely energy efficient house. We did everything from blower door tests at the end of the home's construction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that made a big difference in the efficiency of the home and the amount of electricity that we wound up using. Our home is heated and all the appliances are run by electricity. There's no fuel involved with our home. The initial objective was to create a home that ideally was going to be a net zero home, which involved both looking at solar as well as the way we constructed the house. And I could talk for hours about all the little nuances in building a new home and or remodeling and or doing work on your existing home that will help tighten it up, quote unquote, and make it that much more energy efficient. But to give you some specifics, I've done 2 different solar projects here in the county, one of them here at our home, 8 miles up Whiskey Creek Road, and the other one on top of the Lostine Tavern in Lostine. The solar project here at our home was completed in 2011. It's a 10,000 kilowatt system. I chose to not do a battery system, so we are not, quote unquote, off the grid. Our system is tied to the grid, and each month I receive an electric bill from Pacific Power, and likewise, I receive a separate check from Pacific Power. In the summertime, the bill is much lower, the check is much higher. In the wintertime, the bill is slightly higher, particularly because we have livestock and run a lot of water heaters for our livestock, which are very inefficient. And our check from Pacific Power is much lower. But for our home, fundamentally over the course of the year, our home is net zero. And that does include the livestock heaters that we run as well, which do ramp up our costs a little bit. Based on the numbers that Katie had mentioned about cost, it would take about 4.5 years if your system costs $14,196 based on what we're generating in solar revenue to pay off the system. After that 4.6 years, then it's a net gain for you. You're making money from your solar each month. On the Lostine and at our home, the solar system that I created there, which I would encourage if you have the room for it, are pods. It's a ground mounted system. They're on pods and they rotate with the orientation of the sun. So they generate a much high, they generate, and I'll be off of my numbers, but I'd say about 20% more in solar energy because they're able to rotate with the way the sun's shining. The second system that I put in on the top of the Lostine Tavern was installed in 2014. It is a roof-mounted system. It's on a membrane roof. The roof on our home is a standing seam metal roof. The roof-mounted system is not quite as efficient, and there's two reasons for that. One is just the orientation of the roof of the Lostine Tavern, and the second part is the fact that it is roof-mounted, so it doesn't rotate with the way the sun works. The Lostine Tavern, which is not in operation now, which we all know, when in operation, the solar covered about 60% of the LT's power bills when it was in operation. So it did a big job towards offsetting the cost of running a restaurant that was relatively expensive in the use of energy and power. Both of the systems I had installed were both done by Enterprise Electric. I'm not here espousing Enterprise Electric, but they've done all the electric work for me and both my solar projects, and they've been awesome. In my two systems, the one here at home, which is now 9 years old, I have had one piece of the rotator that failed that Enterprise Electric had to come out and replace. It was not an expensive replace. They had to rebuild the control mechanism. The system on top of the Lostine Tavern, there's been no maintenance cost. I have Enterprise Electric come out every year or two and take a look at it just to make sure everything's fine, but there's been no maintenance cost. So these systems seem to be very well built, efficient, and resistant to our weather and the situation here. So that's really my summary. I believe in solar quite a bit. One last thing, I'm sorry, I failed to mention this. One of the other benefits for me personally is I own a business, and the cost of the solar is a depreciable asset that if you own a business, there's a further economic incentive through the depreciation of the solar system. So that's just something to consider if you own a business in the decision-making process. But finally, and thank you for sharing our story. And I'm very open and willing. If anybody has questions, I think the easiest way would be to email Katie, and Katie can email me, and we can answer those. But I have a lot of belief in the solar system. I told you at the beginning, I tied to the grid. I don't have batteries. And I did that because at the time, my belief in batteries was lower. And I have a concern about the amount of waste that a spent battery generates. So our system, we still buy power from the grid. We sell power back to the grid. I did wire our house in a manner where if we ever wanted to change that, it's not a complicated process to do that. And just if anybody is considering that, that's an option as well. Katie, I think that's what I have to share. I think that's my solar story.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. That was such a great story to share. Really appreciate it. And please, if anybody has questions for Peter, please let me know. That was great.
And Katie, I'm available now too. If you do, I don't know if you do Q&A now. I guess we didn't.
Yeah, we
I
do.
can stay on the call for a little bit if anybody has any specific questions.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, we can move into our Q&A section. And I have, here's one question, Peter, that maybe you could help answer is what about snow coverage on the panels? Do they have to be cleaned off when it snows?
Yeah, it's interesting. In my experience, the panels, because they're collecting solar energy, they melt the snow. So if you are super attentive, which I am not, yes, you'd get out there, and as soon as the snow fell, you'd get a big long-handled broom and pull the snow off your panels. But in a very short period of time, because snow's white, the solar rays go through the snow, the panels collect the energy, they warm up, and the snow slides off the panels. So that's been my experience. I think my roof-mounted panels probably are more impacted by the snow than are my ground-mounted panels. The ground-mounted ones are at a steeper angle, and so they don't hold the snow quite as much.
Awesome. Thank you. If you have any other questions for Peter, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. There's another question here that asked about my example that I showed about costs that showed just the panels. What about storage costs? Yeah, storage systems are going to add a much larger cost. I think that that's something you can definitely talk to your contractors about. But the research that I've done surrounding that, which I will say is very limited, I don't have as much knowledge about storage systems, but with the installation process, as well as buying that battery system, what I've been able to find is kind of adding about $10,000 onto that. But there are some potential to, like with that solar plus storage rebate with Oregon, if that funding comes through again, to potentially get some funding and incentive for that system as well. So that was the last question we've had, but if anybody else would like to throw any questions into the Q&A or into the chat for either Peter or myself, that'd be great. We do have some more time here. Josh asked a question saying, is financing common? That's a great question. I'm not completely sure if that is a super common thing for people, but I have my program manager on the line that I will see if he could answer that. So Zach is here to give his wisdom.
Hey, happy to jump in here. Kate, awesome workshop. And is financing common? Financing is really a great tool to think about with solar. Yes, it is pretty common. And at times you can almost get a solar system to the point where your monthly payment on the loan, so the loan repayment, is almost as little as the amount of money that you're saving, or sometimes even less money than the amount of money that you're saving each month with your solar electricity being produced. So you can't always get there, but you can sometimes get pretty close where your monthly payments are almost completely offset by your solar energy. And for that reason, it is, because it's an upfront capital investment, people often use financing. And if you're interested in financing options, sometimes solar contractors will have a bank that they partner with, and they'll provide a specific type of loan for a solar system. And part of that reason is, as Kate was mentioning, the investment tax credit, that 22% incentive. They'll structure the loan so you can pay back that 22% in that first year after you do your taxes, after your installation. And then the rest of it, you just pay off for the rest of the term. And if your contractor does not have an option like that and they don't work with a bank, you can oftentimes ask your lender, if you work with a lender for your home or business or any other aspect of your life. And it kind of varies, but there are institutions that provide solar loans.
Awesome. I have a question here for Peter. Do Peter's ground mounted on rotating pods panels rotate independently, or do they require a motor?
That's a good question. I'd have to ask the panels. So to the best of my knowledge, that was not a great answer. I believe that those panels, I mean, there's two separate panels. They definitely each rotate independent of each other, because they're probably 30, 40 feet apart from each other. So they're at slightly different angles to the sun. And I don't know the mechanism that, and I apologize, I don't know the mechanism that's involved with that, that causes that rotation, but there is a control panel that does involve, that does monitor that, but I do not know exactly how that operates. So that was a long-winded way of saying I'm not exactly sure. Zach might know.
I can jump in.
Thanks, Zach.
It is a motor, with internal gears, and it's just programmed because the sun will follow the same path at any given time of year. So there is that control panel. It has to know what the date is, and based on the date, it can tell where it needs, and the time, it can tell where it needs to be angled, as long as it knows where true north is. So it is a motor controlled by a, like you're saying, Peter, like a computer system.
Okay, thanks. Now I can answer that question more effectively next time, Zach.
Awesome. Are there any other questions that anyone has? That was the last one that came in. If there are no more questions, I'm not seeing any more come in. I just want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. I'll be sending out an email later with the recording of this, and we'll send out a survey. And I finally just really wanted to thank you, Peter, for being a part of this and sharing your story as somebody who lives in the area. So,
thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.